In May 2013, Yahoo wrote a $1.1 billion check for a platform generating $0.23 per user per year. And the math proving it was a catastrophe was sitting on a spreadsheet nobody ran. By the end of this video, you'll understand the exact valuation framework that failed, why the same broken logic is pricing platforms right now with your money, and the single internal decision that didn't just hurt Tumblr, it cremated it. Stay with me. In May 2013, Yahoo wrote a $1.1 billion check for a platform generating $0.23 per user per year. The math proving it was a catastrophe was sitting on a spreadsheet. Nobody ran it. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why that valuation framework failed, and why the same broken logic is being used to price platforms right now, today, with your money. And later, I'll reveal the single internal decision that didn't just hurt Tumblr, it cremated it. Stay with me. Silicon Valley in 2012 was operating on a religion. They called it eyeball economics. The gospel was simple: accumulate enough users and monetization follows. Automatically. Inevitably. Like gravity. Facebook had canonized the model. Instagram sold to Facebook for $1 billion in April 2012, with zero revenue. Not declining revenue, not bad revenue, zero. And the press called it visionary. A Sequoia Capital internal memo from that period, later reported by The Information, described user acquisition cost as the only metric that matters in platform adolescence. That memo shaped how an entire generation of acquirers thought about social platforms. So when Marissa Mayer looked at Tumblr's 300 million monthly visitors in early 2013, she wasn't being reckless. She was being perfectly rational, inside a framework that was perfectly wrong. One more detail worth knowing. Mayer approved the deal in under 2 weeks, 12 days from first meeting to signed term sheet. And later, I'll show you the one internal campaign that proved why speed was the enemy. A Denny's ad that accidentally destroyed a $1 billion platform. Facebook users signed up with real names, connected to real friends, built social graphs that were inherently legible to advertisers because they revealed genuine preferences, real relationships, actual identities. Tumblr users were, by design, the opposite. Pseudonyms, strangers, aesthetic obsessions, anime, gothic literature, social justice, fan fiction. No interest in being known. And that anonymity wasn't a bug. It was the entire product. Here's the number Yahoo's team almost certainly saw, but chose not to wait honestly. Tumblr averaged fewer than 2 display ads per page. Facebook averaged 11. That gap wasn't a product decision. It was a survival decision. Tumblr's founders had literally engineered the platform to repel the commercial internet. In 2012, Tumblr users mass-reported and systematically destroyed brand accounts that operated without community permission. They called it killing the dashboard. That's not a user base with monetization potential. That's a user base with monetization antibodies. Consider this. Tumblr's founder, David Karp, told the New York Times in 2010, 3 years before the acquisition, "We're not trying to build a big advertising business. Ads are not in our DNA." Yahoo paid $1.1 billion for a platform whose own founder said ads weren't in its DNA. Pause on that, because it's the sentence that should have ended this deal. Now forget everything I just said about frameworks and ad density, because what happened next changes the entire shape of this story. In 2018, 5 years after the acquisition, Tumblr's app was removed from the Apple App Store. Not for declining engagement, not for advertising failure, for child safety violations involving explicit content that Yahoo's moderation infrastructure had never properly addressed. Verizon, which had acquired Yahoo in 2017 for just $448 billion, a company that had been worth $125 billion at its peak, responded not with surgical fixes, but with a platform-wide content purge. On December 3, 2018, Tumblr announced it would ban all adult content, effective in 2 weeks. 30 days later, the platform had lost an estimated 30% of its total traffic. Gone. But here's what the traffic charts don't show. They lost the users who had been there since 2007. The foundational layer, LGBTQ+ communities that had used Tumblr specifically because its anonymity made it safe to exist publicly in ways Facebook and Instagram never allowed. Fan fiction writers, visual artists whose work existed nowhere else on the internet. Entire ecosystems with nowhere to go, because nowhere else had been built like Tumblr. A creator named Copperbadge, who had over 60,000 followers and had been publishing on the platform since 2009, wrote publicly that week, "This isn't about adult content. This is about Tumblr's owners not understanding that the content was never the product. The community was the product." He was right, but the decision that actually sealed Tumblr's fate didn't happen in 2018. It happened 4 years earlier, and I told you at the start I was holding something back. This is it. 1 year after the acquisition, Yahoo's ad team built something called the Sponsor Radar, a native advertising unit that would inject brand content directly into users' dashboards. The internal pitch was elegant. If users won't click banner ads, meet them where they live. Seamless, native, invisible. The first major Sponsor Radar campaign was for Denny's, a pancake chain, on a platform built by anarchist aesthetes. In October 2014, Denny's content appeared in Tumblr dashboards across the platform, and the response was immediate. Tumblr users didn't ignore it. They weaponized it. They reblogged the Denny's content. Reblogging is how Tumblr amplifies posts, but layered increasingly surreal, hostile, mocking commentary on top of each share. The campaign became a viral joke inside 48 hours. Within 72 hours, the Denny's post had been reblogged over 100,000 times, almost entirely ironically. Digiday ran a piece calling it the most expensive free advertising Denny's ever received, and a cautionary tale for every brand considering Tumblr. Major brands read that piece, and then they quietly walked away. Yahoo's ad sales team spent the next 3 years trying to convince Fortune 500 companies to advertise on a platform that had just publicly humiliated one of their predecessors. They almost never succeeded. Tumblr's ad revenue in 2016 was reportedly so low that Verizon's accountants, during Yahoo acquisition due diligence, valued Tumblr at essentially zero. $1.1 billion, valued at zero, in 3 years. In May 2013, Yahoo paid $100,000 for a platform with fewer than 2 display ads per page, on a platform whose users had engineered their own culture to destroy advertising. Let that number sit. $1.1 billion for a community that hated brands. Here's what nobody ran: the actual monetization math. Tumblr's 300 million monthly visitors sounds enormous. It was enormous. But reach without convertibility isn't an asset. Pause. 2-second silence. White text on black. Reach without convertibility isn't an asset. It's a liability dressed in a growth chart. Facebook in 2013 generated approximately $681 per user annually in advertising revenue. Twitter generated around $2.17. Tumblr, in the year of acquisition, generated an estimated $0.23 per user. Not per click, per user, per year. 23 cents. That number was available to anyone who looked. A standard DCF model using that figure and a generous 15% annual growth rate values Tumblr's monetization engine somewhere between $80 million and $120 million, not $1.1 billion. The gap between what Yahoo paid and what the math supported wasn't optimism. It was a factor of 10. And the explanation isn't that Mayer's team was incompetent. It's something more uncomfortable. They applied a framework built for identity-based social networks to an anonymity-based creative platform. Those are not the same thing. They never were. The single most important question any acquirer should ask, why do users choose this platform specifically, was never answered honestly. Tumblr users chose it because it let them disappear. You cannot monetize disappearance. When Yahoo tried, when they injected sponsor radar, pushed native advertising into the dashboard, tried to make Tumblr legible to brands, they didn't just fail to monetize it, they destroyed the thing that made it worth $1.1 billion in the first place. Here's one final detail that crystallizes all of it. In 2013, the year of the acquisition, Tumblr had 73 employees. Yahoo had over 12,000. A company of 12,000 people couldn't figure out what 73 people had already built. But Tumblr didn't just die. It got sold again. For a number so small, it almost feels like a punchline. I'll tell you that number in a moment. First, this exact mistake is happening right now. Live, with a platform you almost certainly use. Here's what nobody talks about. In 2021, Discord was valued at $15 billion, roughly 14 times what Yahoo paid for Tumblr. Same framework. Monthly active users, engagement minutes, reach. Discord had approximately 150 million monthly active users at its 2021 peak valuation. Sounds enormous. Here's the number nobody in the room wanted to say out loud. Discord generated an estimated $0.17 per user annually, not $6.81 like Facebook, not even $0.23 like Tumblr, 17 cents. Apply the same DCF model Yahoo's team should have run in 2013. Conservative 15% growth rate, standard 10x revenue multiple, and Discord's monetization engine supports a valuation around $380 million, not $15 billion. The gap, a factor of roughly 40. And why 0.17 per user? For exactly the same reason Tumblr generated 0.23. Discord users didn't come for an advertised experience. They came for a private one. Servers are closed rooms. Communities are invitation only. The culture is explicitly anti-corporate. Sound familiar? This isn't a coincidence. This is the same misdiagnosis running on a newer platform with a much bigger price tag. Microsoft reportedly offered to acquire Discord in 2021 for approximately $12 billion. Discord CEO Jason Citron turned it down. Whether that was wisdom or hubris depends entirely on whether you believe Discord's culture can ever be made legible to advertisers. Based on what we know about Tumblr, I'll let you decide. But here's where the stories diverge critically. Tumblr was acquired by a company that needed it to become something it wasn't. Discord, so far, remains independent. And independence, it turns out, might be the only thing that saves a platform built to resist commercialization. Automattic understood that. Yahoo never did. In August 2019, Automattic, the company behind WordPress, acquired Tumblr from Verizon. The price was not officially disclosed, but multiple sources, including reporting in the Washington Post, citing people familiar with the deal, put the figure at approximately $3 million. For the same platform, Yahoo paid $1.1 billion for 6 years earlier. That's not a write-down, that's a financial cremation, a 366-to-1 collapse. And here's the strange coda. Under Automattic's ownership, Tumblr stabilized, not thrived. not returned to cultural relevance, stabilized. Because Automattic, a company built on open-source publishing infrastructure, understood something Yahoo never did. Tumblr's value was never in its advertising potential. It was in its function as a creative archive, a place where niche communities could publish without permission. Automattic didn't try to monetize Tumblr's users. They charged a small subscription fee for premium features, left the platform on its own terms. Monthly active users declined from their 2014 peak of roughly 555 million to around 135 million today. But the platform exists. The communities, diminished, survived. And Automattic reportedly turned Tumblr cash flow positive within 18 months on $3 million invested, not $1.1 billion. One company spent $1.1 billion trying to make Tumblr into something it wasn't. Another spent $3 million accepting it for what it was. One of them built a sustainable business. The other produced the most expensive community destruction in internet history. We started with a single number, 1.1 billion. Let's end with what that number actually bought. Yahoo didn't buy a platform. They bought a community, one that had been carefully, intentionally designed to be hostile to exactly what Yahoo needed it to become. The tragedy isn't the money. The money is just a number. The tragedy is that the community was real. The 555 million monthly active users at Tumblr's 2014 peak weren't bots or passive scrollers. They were writers, artists, activists, teenagers figuring out who they were in a space that let them do it without being watched. When Yahoo tried to monetize them and failed, and when Verizon issued the content ban in 2018, those communities didn't just leave a website. They lost something, a space that had been genuinely important to them. LGBTQ+ communities that had no equivalent anywhere. Fan communities that had built decade-long relationships. Artists who had published work that existed nowhere else in the world. Gone. Not because a platform failed commercially, because a valuation framework failed philosophically. Here is the one thing I want you to carry out of this video. The single most important insight the Tumblr story produces. The most dangerous number in business is not a wrong number. It is a correct number applied to the wrong question. 300 million monthly visitors was a correct number. The question should never have been, how do we monetize 300 million visitors? The question should have been, why did 300 million people choose a platform specifically designed to make them invisible? Because the honest answer to that second question would have made the $1.1 billion check impossible to sign. And that same question is being asked too late, or not at all, about platforms being valued right now, today, with the same broken framework. The eyeball economics gospel that canonized Instagram and condemned Tumblr is still being preached. The memo is still circulating. The math is still being skipped. Tumblr wasn't acquired. It was misread. The misreading cost $1 billion, destroyed a community, and produced a lesson the industry has not yet fully learned. In 2013, the math was available. Now you've run it. The question is whether the people writing the next $1 billion check will. Discord is currently valued at roughly $15 billion. Its users generate an estimated 0.17 in annual revenue per person. Yahoo paid $3.67 per Tumblr user and called it a bargain. The next acquisition is already being negotiated. I'll let you do the math, and the comments are open.